The industry really changes at such a fast rate that even what you learn in school maybe won't even apply in 5 or even 10 years from now. So we always have to keep the spirit of forever learning, or we never stop learning.
Welcome to the Learn Skin podcast with me, Dr. Raja.
And me, Dr. Hadar, where we discuss all things skin.
Join us as we delve into the art and science of skin health in today's episode.
Hey, Raja, can you say the thing I told you to tell them?
Of course. We are board-certified dermatologists. This podcast is meant for educational and informational purposes only and is not considered medical advice, nor does it serve as a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. All opinions shared do not express the views of Learn Health, Inc. Let's get to the good stuff.
Hey, Raja, how are you today?
Hey, Hadar, are you in a kind of aesthetic mood today, or esthetician-ish mood?
I'm feeling pretty, my friend. You know, we talk about in this season, we want to really get to know this part of our business that dermatologists and other healthcare provider in the skin sort of industry or skin sphere are maybe not familiar with, the world of estheticians. They are around, they're among us, they work with us, even if we know it or not. They see our patients and we see their clients. And so I think increasing that conversation is really important. And today we have someone special with us, right?
Yes, we do. And you know, Learn Skin has now opened up an Integrative Esthetician Certificate Program track. And so it behooves us to have these conversations. And we have, you know, it turns out before we started this podcast, we found out she's not just an esthetician, she's a Renaissance woman. So this is Millicent Russo, and she has been licensed as an esthetician for over 20 years. She's the director of the Integrative Aesthetics Institute and president of the Integrative Aesthetics Association. And she's she's very well-spoken, world-class educator. But we just found out that she's also pretty darn good at mountain biking, and she knows how to really get outdoors. And she's in wilderness medicine. She's talking about going down to the Grand Canyon. So I don't know where we start. I guess we'll talk about aesthetics, but gosh, you have so many sides to you that really push the horizons of everything. Welcome to the podcast, Millicent.
Thank you so much for having me. It truly is my pleasure.
Well, Millicent, let's start with the beginning and tell us, how did you get into the whole world of aesthetics and becoming an esthetician? Why that profession?
Oh, really great question. You know, and I feel like my answer is like most people who enter aesthetics, which is I had an intimate connection with skin issues as a teen and as a young adult. And the state that I live in, I had a school that was really progressive for its time because it was a school created by a woman named Isabel Caleros called the National Aesthetics Institute. And at the time, it was the only school that offered just a program for estheticians. You could graduate with just your aesthetics license and just focus on skincare. Before that, you had to receive your license from a cosmetology school. And so skin really wasn't the focus, hair was the focus. So I got an amazing education from Isabel. She was one of my mentors and still is, and really inspired me to become an educator. I went back to her school. She taught me how to teach. And then I ended up running the National Aesthetics Institute before I went into my aesthetics practice and really focused on the corrective or medical side. And then just by chance, I happened to work with a holistic dermatologist, which really helped me to develop the Integrated Aesthetics Institute, which is a educational platform that I now run. I also founded the Integrated Aesthetics Association and Scholarship Fund, which is a totally non-for-profit organization based here out of Phoenix, Arizona, where we try and uplift the aesthetics community.
You know, Millicent, I have to say, just listening to you, I can see you are an entrepreneur esthetician at heart. I can see that you're trying to think of how can we expand the horizons. Now I get why you are also into wilderness medicine and just going into the unknown and being comfortable.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
I do have a question here. What do you think that most programs, when it comes to teaching estheticians in the conventional model, where do you think they do really well? And where do you think there are gaps in their knowledge that really need to be addressed better?
Great question. I think our aesthetic programs do a great job of laying the foundation. Very good at preparing our estheticians, for what they need to know, laying those fundamentals. But where I see areas of improvement are to incorporate contemporary or modern best practices. So the skincare world, the aesthetics world is changing so fast. We see new modalities come to market every year. New data is presented to us every year. And sometimes I see traditional education programs lack the ability to incorporate the most current data that we have or create best practices based upon that data, which is again where the Institute sort of comes into play, because we were able to throw and fluctuate with the industry, at the rate that it's expanding.
Millicent, why is it that you think you're able to keep up? And what is it that maybe holds other programs from being able to keep up with the data, since that is what they're supposed to do, right? At the end of the day with teaching. But we know in all fields this becomes a challenge. But what is it in aesthetics that you think is a challenge?
It's the size. It's the size of these larger schools and also where they get their funding from. So if you attend a school and you get grants from the federal government, those programs have to be vetted, rightly so, through different gateways. But unfortunately, that is a very long, arduous, expensive process. And I believe that is to be the number one, sort of gateway to the growth of our industry. What we offer is postgraduate education. At this time, we don't offer any federally funded assistance or any programs. So we're really able to move, we're able to fluctuate or be flexible with the market in a way that larger programs aren't. Every year during the summer, we take off a month and we update our curriculum annually. That's also something I'm not sure other programs do. Again, because sometimes that change is small. Sometimes, only 2 or 3 things have come up during that year that affect our protocol. But sometimes, it's a huge protocol shift depending on what has arisen in the industry.
Thank you, Millicent. That's news to me. And as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about myself and the audience. And perhaps you can start by giving us, a 2-sentence summary as to the training an esthetician goes, because what you said right now sounds like it makes a lot of sense to me, but I'm trying to kind of dig into the details of that and understand when you say we revisit the curriculum, we try to keep up to speed. What are those basics that every esthetician, in your opinion, and as your curriculum reflects it, should know? And what kind of training across the board estheticians are getting? So when dermatologists are listening or other healthcare providers in the dermatology world are listening to this program, that can maybe give us a better context.
Yeah, absolutely. What estheticians are required to know varies by state. Each state determines the level of proficiency and the level of skills needed to be learned to receive your licensure. So think about it like a dentist and a dental hygienist. The dentist and the dental hygienist are both learning from the same book, so to speak, where the dental hygienist just isn't learning as much, but they're both learning those same foundational key items. That is not how dermatologists and estheticians translate. Dermatologists and estheticians are not learning from the same book, so to speak. And for estheticians, that book can change depending on the state that you're in. So there are some ubiquitous or things that each esthetician in each state does learn. There are the fundamentals, the layers of the skin, the basic appendages, how manual exfoliation or manual manipulation work on the surface of the skin. But really above and beyond those basics, that all fluctuates per state.
And that, of course, plays an important role because in every state, estheticians can do different procedures, right?
That's right. Some states you can earn a master level certificate. Some states require continuing education credits and some don't. So it really just depends on the state that you're in. Now, irregardless of that, so I travel all over and I get to see a little bit, I get a little taste of the industry in each state, and it's different really in each state. Right. It's so interesting. But irregardless of the licensure requirement level, you never want to stop learning as an esthetician. Again, as I had stated before, the industry really changes at such a fast rate that even what you learn in school maybe won't even apply in 5 or even 10 years from now. So we always have to keep the spirit of, for forever learning, or we never stop learning. Well, then the second point to that was that I think it's also a good idea to learn the same thing from different educators. So if I were to take a class on, let's say, massage, I want to take a massage class for maybe 2 or 3 different educators because they all might present the material in a different way, and they all might offer me something a little bit different. And, I like to say we add it to our basket of education, right? All these little tidbits, over time we're adding to this basket and then it just fills up. And really that's what helps us to become well-rounded in the skincare world.
Yeah, I love the spirit of what you're talking about in the sense that we should always keep learning. The great Hadar Levtov says from time to time, he says, stay curious. And I like this. It's like stay curious and stay furious while you're staying curious.
Yes,
Does that count
Absolutely.
if I rhyme with the same word over and over again? That's kind of lame, isn't it? So anyway.
That's exactly was my thought. And moving this forward, I'm thinking because your perspective, Millicent, is so interesting because you get to travel, you speak to different audiences, you also are a leader in the field. And so it brings up the question of I know you speak about the business of being an esthetician. And from a dermatologist standpoint, I think people in private practice, especially, but in any other setting, when they want to incorporate an esthetician into the business, there's always a lot of questions that come up. And my question to you is what are the most common pitfalls you see when things don't work well, when an esthetician and a dermatologist try to collaborate? A lot of times, dermatologists will say, hey, I want to expand my business. I want to bring other capabilities. Maybe there's some simple procedures that, depending on the state, as we mentioned, that an esthetician can do, microdermabrasion, maybe microneedling, depending on where you are. And so they want to add an esthetician to the business. And that's often a very common combination that we see. And in theory, should work very well. And we know it does. Now, I think from your perspective, I'm wondering if you ever seen when these things don't work well, or there's some pitfalls or areas where there's either friction or misunderstandings and, along the lines of those kind of things that happen and that maybe dermatologists can learn by listening and saying, hey, I'll be careful if I want to do this.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I can absolutely speak from personal experience on that as well. And we train lots of physicians, nurses, and estheticians in these types of scenarios. So again, I would kind of go back to my analogy of that you're not learning from the same book. So you both have something to learn from each other. So if both people can come into the partnership with an open mind and an open heart that you can learn something from each other, that establishes the foundation for a successful relationship. Oftentimes I see either party really not respecting or not really understanding or trying to understand the experience or training of the other. But again, going back to the analogy of the dentist and the dental hygienist, they should work very closely together and symbiotically. When it works well, it works very well. It works very well because the esthetician is trained in a way that they can offer services and modalities that the dermatologist and the nurses can't. We're highly trained on product ingredients and retail sales and modalities that work on the surface of the skin, which work very well in combination with these other things that dermatologists and nurses are going to tackle. It's really a partnership that goes hand in hand.
Millicent, I appreciate you mentioning that because I think it's true. I think when it comes to product ingredients and especially retail sales, Hadar, do you remember any lectures on that in residency? I know the derms want to say that they know the product ingredients, but we don't get any lectures on it except some basic ones, but not the ones that are trending out there.
Absolutely. I am scratching my head pretty strongly right now, and I can't recall any of that.
Well, Hadar, be careful. You don't have too much hair, man. You'll create an erosion.
I know. That's why I stopped. I stopped right away. I took a note. Open mind, Millicent. Open mind. Keep an open mind. That's a key ingredient in any partnership, I think. But here,
actually, can I interject a question here? I wanted to interject a question because sometimes, we have like Hadar and I have the dermatologist perspective and not just estheticians, we'll talk about, what we're looking for. What is the personality type or the little clues when you first meet someone that say, hey, this is going to be a good partner for me, whether it's hiring an MA or whether it's working with a nurse or maybe even a colleague or even finding an esthetician. I'd love to get the esthetician perspective. What is the esthetician being taught, or what do you think they should be looking for personality-wise in that dermatologist that they're going to go and work with, or in that colleague that they're going to start collaborating with? What are your thoughts on that?
Great question. Great question. So the first thing that comes to mind is something that you can't teach or we can't put down on a piece of paper, which is an eagerness to learn and an eagerness to be a team player. Because I think above and beyond that, all things can be taught and all things can be supplemented with education, good education. Of course, experience comes into play and, what continuing education courses they've brought on. Also, retail sales is big, right? It's an art and it's something that we have to learn. It's not often taught very well, but a good high quality esthetician should be able to look at the back of an ingredient bottle and be able to tell you what that ingredient does without even looking at the label. So that might be a cool, fun thing to incorporate into an interview to really kind of test, what they know.
Oh my God, we should do a series called Who Am I? And then show them ingredient labels.
Ingredients will tell you everything. That sounds like a great title for a lecture, which reminds me that you will be speaking at the upcoming IDS, the Esthetician Track, right?
Yes, I am very excited. My topic is microneedling. I do specialize in microneedling, and we have a really fantastic microneedling curriculum with the Institute. So it's my pleasure to speak on it. It really is holistic and integrative in nature. And I think oftentimes people hear microneedling and a picture will come to their mind of a bloody face or something like that. There's a certain celebrity, I'm not going to name names, that really has given us this vision of what.
Well, she did popularize it, the vampire facial. We're all thinking the same person.
Right, we are, exactly, we are. And so, and that's really not best practice, to be quite frank. It really doesn't have to be an invasive procedure. It can be done to the degree at which it's needed per the indication. So it doesn't always have to be aggressive, and it works very symbiotic with our body. We're causing a small amount of stress to increase restoration. And microneedling, we oftentimes focus on the depth, right? Everybody's sort of obsessed with how deep we're going to go. And I hope in my speech to really shift the lens towards indication. Indication for microneedling will really set the parameters of how it is that you perform this procedure, which will include pre and post care, needle depth, all of those parameters.
I think that's a great point, because when it comes to microneedling, the other thing that controls depth is the surface tension. And so I always have my assistant really create some tension if we're going after an acne scar, for example, because you got to get a deeper penetration. And the skin has its natural elasticity, which will actually, you'll never get the depth that's listed on the microneedle meter.
I absolutely love that you said that. Absolutely. The skin is elastic.
Skin is viscoelastic. Yes. I was doing my engineering graduate work and we looked at microneedles and we looked at penetration depth. And you had to be, just because you were 500 microns, there was no way you're penetrating 500 microns into the skin. You're probably penetrating about a half or maybe a quarter, depending on where you were and how tightly you bound the skin down to increase the penetration. And then you have a bed of nails effect when the nails are too close to each other. So there's a few things that come up. So I have a question though, Millicent, for you. A lot of people use microneedling, and I know for estheticians, there are some limitations on how deep they can go, especially depending on the state and whatnot. But a lot of people use it to bypass the stratum corneum and deliver different ingredients in. Do you ever get worried about safety with doing that sort of a thing, or like developing some sort of contact dermatitis or irritation by allowing things in that shouldn't be in?
Absolutely. And granulomas. Absolutely. It is no longer best practice to use microneedling to quote unquote infuse products into the skin. This has been proven by numerous studies. The FDA did a study. 100% of participants all produced granulomas. This is easily, go onto Google Scholar and type in microneedling adverse events or granulomas, and these studies will all come up. So it's been proven that it's no longer best practice to use microneedling to quote unquote infuse products into the skin. Absolutely.
So perhaps it depends on the ingredients then? It depends on what your ingredients are that you're choosing.
Well, yes, but, so this is where we get tricky as well, because in order for product to be shelf stable, it has to include preservatives and other sorts of, non-natural or non-native ingredients to the skin. So is the skin actually responding to those ingredients or the, let's say, vitamin C or hyaluronic acid or whatever it is you're infusing? So these studies really have to be done with the purest form of ingredients. And then our next question is, are those readily available to our skincare professionals?
Oh my gosh, such great questions. Wouldn't you say, Hadar? I mean, it's true, because if we have a bunch of ingredients and a bunch of preservatives, what's creating the reaction? Usually it's the
That's right.
preservatives, isn't it?
Yeah, no,
That's right. That's right.
absolutely.
What form of vitamin C, right? Where vitamin C is native within our skin, but it has to be in the right form. So there's lots of these questions that we still have yet to have answers to.
Well, as we continue on, we could get lost. I mean, Hadar, I'm so sorry. Millicent and I could go on this massive digression on microneedling, but we wanted to bring it back to also talking about the community of estheticians and how you want to build the pathway forward. What do you see as the vision for the best way that you can continue to uplift each other and then also work in an integrative environment? What do you think is the way forward?
Oh yeah, great question. So the first thing is our mentality as estheticians. There is enough for everyone, and I invite all estheticians to open up to a mindset of positivity for everyone. We need to move away from a scarcity mindset. There really is enough for everybody in our market, and we all can share with each other. And then it comes about creating opportunities. So we need opportunity to collaborate and to network with one another. I created the association and the scholarship fund so that we would have opportunities here in the state of Arizona. There was no professional association here in Arizona, so that's why I created one. And it is all non-for-profit. So all of the funds that we earn go into the scholarship fund, and the scholarship fund grants tuition assistance to estheticians that wouldn't otherwise have access to quality education or business building. So I think once you get everybody in the room, we're all comparing each other on social media, and I think that can be a very dangerous place. But then once everybody gets in the room and they start talking with each other, the energy of our industry really shifts. And I've seen that happen over the last several years with the association. And I really pride Arizona on being a state that is very welcoming and supportive within the aesthetics industry.
Wow, Millicent, I came in expecting to talk about the superficial, but I got notes here for open mind and lifting each other within the business, and not to mention going down the Grand Canyon. So I'm uplifted, and I cannot wait. I got to tell you, it sounds like your lecture is going to be amazing, and I may have to skip the main venue and kind of maybe slip into the side room to listen to your talk. It's going to be tough competition now. So
Hadar, that's where there are two of us, right? One of us will be in the main session. The other person goes and takes care of the other stuff.
Yeah. So I have a feeling it's not going to be such a strict division anymore at IDS. Oh my gosh, this is mind-blowing to me. I'm still getting used to new things here. So listen, it's wonderful to have you on the program, and I thank you for sharing your skills and perspective. And it's really unique to have that kind of bird's eye view perspective, if you will, from someone who kind of speaks around the nation and is a leader in the field. So thank you for coming on the program. I'm looking forward to your talk at IDS and maybe for future episodes.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Hey, Raja, do you know where the integrative medicine movement started?
According to Google, since Google knows everything, Dr. Andrew Weil founded the Center for Integrative Medicine at the University of Arizona in Tucson back in 1994. Why do you ask?
Well, you know how we always try to get to the root cause? I think we need to go big for the fifth annual Integrative Dermatology Symposium. How about we do this? Let's meet at the Los Ventana Canyon Resort in Tucson, Arizona. Or you can join virtually from September 30th to October 2nd and hear from the world-renowned experts like Andrew Weil.
Exciting. And our theme is connecting mind, body, and spirit to take a more holistic approach to our patient care. What do you say?
Absolutely. I mean, where else can you get the latest on diet and dermatology, hypnosis, botanicals, common diseases, aesthetics, and other unique topics in dermatology with practical takeaways to start using in clinic right away?
So true. And let's not forget, we've got the new track for estheticians too. I think I'm going to need to call in a sick day or two before the symposium so I can enjoy the waterfall and trails on the resort, stargaze, play a round or two of golf or tennis, relax at the spa, and catch up with colleagues at the evening receptions.
Yes, that place is spectacular. Use our discount code POD25 at checkout for 25% off.